Hello and welcome to this video. It is the end of October, which means it's almost NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month, where some writers throughout the whole month of November will try and write a novel, usually 50,000 words, but people take different projects and just use November to focus on that writing project. So October is Preptober, which is where you prepare and plan and get inspiration for whatever writing project you're going to be working on. So today I'm going to be talking about how to get story inspiration and how to plan a story. Number one, what is a story structure? A story structure is basically how you lay out your story, how you lay out the plot, how the reader will follow the story through. This is before you even think about what your story is. Sometimes what the story is will impact how it's best to lay out the plot, but I like to go, how am I going to lay out the plot, and then what kind of stories fit with that, because I know how I like to write. Some people do lots of different techniques in how they lay out their stories that work for them, but I know how I like to lay out my stories. If you don't know that yet, then maybe start with your story idea and then see how it naturally flows. And your writing will tell you a lot about what story structures you like to work with. I'm not going to go through too many story structures in this video. There are lots of videos on YouTube that you can look at by other creators about more in-depth looks at different story structures, but I don't really use a complicated one. I literally use beginning, middle and end, which is the basic one, which is the sort of 3-stage classic story structure, which is literally just you write the beginning, you write the middle and you write the end, and it's very chronological. But I do like to switch this up, so I will either start in the middle, have a flashback to the beginning, and then that leads to the end. So it's like you start at the height of the action in the story, and then you sort of flash back to how you got there, and then you carry on in the middle that leads you to the outcome of the story. I do enjoy writing like that. Or you can start at the end. You can be like, this is the ending. Like, I don't know, if someone dies in the end of your story, you can be like, this person has died, and then it like goes back to how you got there. Either like maybe it goes right back to the beginning, lives out that character's life a little bit, continually sort of referencing the fact that this character will eventually die, and then leads you through the middle. Or maybe it goes end, beginning, middle, beginning, middle, beginning, middle, end. So you're sort of switching between time frames to give the reader quite an interesting look into this whole plot. So I just like to work with those 3 sections and play around with where they go in the story. Sometimes I will write a story and then I'll literally take sections and move them around to see if it feels more interesting reading it in a different way. There are, because this story structure is quite linear, if that's the right word, but some story structures can go up and down and up and down and up and down, or like really down, really up, or a little bit up and down, if you know what I mean, because it's sort of the action doesn't just go beginning, action, ending. It sort of goes on an emotional roller coaster almost through the character's life, which can be more interesting, but often has a lot more side plots, which I find difficult to work with as a writer if I'm trying to put them in. Sometimes they naturally occur, but I like to focus very heavily on specific characters and not have too much going on. So, how do you actually come up with a plot? Because the hardest thing to do as a writer is to find inspiration, especially if you've got a sort of creative block or you just don't really know what you want to say. The easiest thing for me when I don't have inspiration is to go on a walk, and I'll walk around, I'll observe people, I'll start trying to make my life into stories. Either like I'm walking down the road, the rain is falling off the pavements and I can hear my footsteps or something like that. Or I'll sit in a cafe and I'll observe people, I'll pick up on hints of conversation and I'll try and picture the surrounding plot of their lives, what's led them to be sat in that cafe having that conversation. Or I'll be in different settings, for example, on the train or in the park or at your office or something like that, and just sort of fitting a story into that setting and how do the characters interact with the setting and where might they go afterwards to a different setting. And taking inspiration from the world around me is something I find really helpful. Another thing you can do is to look at books you really enjoy reading and pick up on the genre. I like writing crime fiction or fantasy or mild horror, sort of like teen horror, young adult type fiction. But yeah, look at the books that you enjoy reading, because that's potentially the genre you'll enjoy writing. Not always, but sometimes. And it will be the genre that you're most informed in mentally, because you'll be sort of thinking in that pattern. And I do really enjoy reading as a way to start writing. Sometimes, maybe I should get a book for this. Now, this is a poetry book, but you know, it serves the purpose. But sometimes what I'll do is I'll have a book next to me while I'm writing, and I'll have my notebook here. And I won't follow the actual plot of whatever book I'm writing, but every time I finish a page of my notebook, I will turn a page in the book. And that will keep me writing, because every time I finish a page, I turn a page. I finish a page, I turn a page. And eventually you might get to the end of the book or the chapter. And that's just a way to motivate myself. Or sometimes as writing exercises, I will go through a book and write as a direct inspiration from that. For example, if the book starts with a girl's in a coffee shop and she is feeling lonely, maybe I'll write a boy is in a bar and he's feeling strangely happy today. So sort of not directly being, I'm not copywriting the book, I'm almost reflecting it and making it an opposite as a starting place for my story, just because sometimes it's difficult to know where to start, like where on earth am I going? Or watch movies and be like, well, what do I find interesting? What keeps me watching this? Is it a dystopia? Is it a horror? Are you following the character's emotional arc? And I think that is one of the really important things, is plot is driven by character. Your character needs to be believable. Your character needs to have emotional drive and needs to have a motivation. Your character can be good or bad. It can be the hero or the villain, or it can be a completely passive character. It can be likable. It can be unlikable. It can be human. It could be animalistic. It could be an illusion. It could be a sort of figurative concept for anything, really. It could be something that's been personified. But whoever or whatever your character is, the reader needs to be invested in this character's inner dialogue. So, you know, if someone has died in your character's life, why does that matter to that character? You know, what was the emotional connection between those two characters, and what will it lead your character to do? What action will it lead your character to achieve because of that emotion? Everything is driven by the character's emotion and internal dialogue. So that's something to really consider, is what matters to your character. And every time you make a plot point, why does it matter to your character, and what does it lead your character to do and think? And it's really important to get in the headspace. Another thing I would recommend for getting inspiration is Pinterest. I love a good Pinterest scroll, love a good Pinterest board. So hop onto Pinterest and type in whatever you like and make a board of your story. You can make different boards for each of your characters, or you can make sections within one board for different characters, settings, and parts of the plot and that kind of thing. So that's sort of what I've got for you today. So I'd say a task is to, one, maybe research a few different story structures, or see what you like to, what story structure you like to write in, or write down a basic plot. I don't know, a man took his dog for a walk can be the beginning. The dog got off the lead can be the middle, and somebody found the dog can be the end. And then maybe a bit more complex than that, but you get the idea. And then try and move them around and see how it works. For example, you can start with somebody's found a dog, and then you can go back to the beginning of the dog being like, oh, I'm going for a walk, and then you can go back to the end of the dog being like, somebody's found me, like, who is this person? And then you can go back to the middle of the dog being like, oh yeah, I escaped. Or something like that, and just see how you can switch it up and make it more interesting, and how that impacts how the reader follows the story. So look at story structure and how you can move it around. Secondly, develop a character, get into character, put on something fun, a costume, a piece of music, a piece of clothing. Look at parts of your own character that you would like to implement into a character, and develop a character, because sometimes having a character can create a story. Or you can go to different settings, go to the train station, go to the park, go sit on a bench somewhere and just watch people, and just start taking inspiration from the world and the people around you, because that can be really super helpful in finding inspiration. I hope you have a fantastic Preptober and get your stories planned and prepped, and have a fantastic start to NaNoWriMo next month. I'm hoping to do a few videos for NaNoWriMo, but you will see if you keep checking my channel every Friday. Bye!